Thank you for joining us. First off, what's your name and where were you born?
My name's Mike Blankenship, and I was born in San Antonio, Texas.
How did you join the Army and why did you choose artillery?
I joined the Army because I needed money for college, and they basically chose my military specialty for me based on testing.
So you didn't choose, you were just assigned artillery?
Yes.
How old were you when you first joined?
I was 19 years old when I joined the military.
And did you have any practice with the artillery? Did they give you training at all?
The training that you get is you have basic training, and once you graduate from basic training, you learn your skill set. And that's, I guess, 6-8 weeks long after basic training. And when you're finished with that, they send you off to your first assignment.
About how long were you in the Army total?
I was in 2 years active duty and 4 years inactive duty. So I went straight out of basic training, did my training, and then I went to Flensburg, Germany, and ended up my 2 years there.
So you did 2 years of active duty in Germany?
Yes.
Between what years was that?
1982 to 1984.
How did you adapt to the life and with all the military stuff, where the strictness and all that?
I think that the basic training part was the hard part, and that was the part that I think that everybody should go through, because it really, they kind of break you down and build you up, and it gives you a lot more confidence and allows you to learn how to deal with difficult times in 24-hour segments, and that you guys learn you can do anything for 24 hours. And it's helpful not only when you're in the military, but helpful throughout the rest of your life.
What was the most exciting thing you were able to do when working with artillery?
I really liked working with the NATO forces. I think I ended up in this military specialty because I speak German. And my role was the liaison with the NATO forces. So speaking German, the Danes speak English, the Germans speak English, but it was much easier to talk to them in their native tongue.
Are you completely fluent in Germany?
I used to be. That was 20 years ago, but yes.
During your service, was the Berlin Wall still up?
Yes, it was.
Did you get to see it come down?
Not when I was in the military, but we did go on some trips, and we did check out the East German border, and it was the Cold War was real, and it was really kind of scary seeing the border and their troops patrolling their border, and it was real.
How'd you feel when you found out that the Berlin Wall had fallen?
It was a great thing.
What type of artillery did you use in the fields?
My job was a Lance missile crewman, and it was a portable nuclear warhead. And then we had just regular arms like M16s, M50s, things like that, handguns if you needed, but the main weapon was the mobile nuclear warhead, which was the Lance missile.
How far would the missile shoot when it was launched?
They told us that the classified range was 30, but we hoped it was more than 30.
What was your specific job when working in artillery? What did you do?
My job when I was in Germany was to make sure that, to control the warhead, to arm the warhead, and to make sure it was pointed at the bad guys. Because the Germans, the Brits, or the Danes are the ones who had the actual main missile assemblage. And we had to make sure that we were aimed at the bad guys.
Did you ever fire missiles besides in training?
No active duty combat, no. Just training.
Did you ever take missiles out of the base on fire missions?
When we went on training, we had real warheads, yes. What
was it like living in Germany?
It was fantastic. I only spent like a month on the German post in barracks. There were 2 to a room, but after about a month, I actually had a car and I had my own apartment in town. So it was very nice. It was one of the benefits of living on a German military post or being assigned to that detachment.
So you weren't forced to live on base. You could live wherever you wanted to?
Absolutely. And it was a big benefit for working with the NATO troops. If I worked in some of the big Army posts, I would have had to live on post and be in big barracks, and it would just be basically living with a bunch of American guys and girls as opposed to actually living with German people on the German economy.
How did the German people treat you if they even knew if you were part of the army?
It wasn't a problem back then. As long as, you know, if you make an effort to speak German, and I was lucky I spoke German without an accent, so they thought I was German. They didn't really know I was American. They wondered what part of Germany I was from. So it was great. And when they found out I was American and they knew I spoke German, it was not a problem at all.
How was it when you went from your civilian life to all of a sudden being in the military?
Big change, but a positive change in that you learn a lot about yourself in basic training, and it helps build confidence, and you're able to do things that you never thought you could do. And those are lessons you learn early, and you carry those with you throughout the rest of your life. And it was a very positive thing. Looking back, at the time it was miserable. But you know, seeing what it does to you and for you, and the benefits you can get from it throughout the rest of your life, it's invaluable experience.
Well, did you form any friendships during your service?
I did. Absolutely. And you know, I really hadn't thought much about my military experience per se. I thought about basic training quite a bit, but not about the job that I did in the military. And when some of my friends asked me to do this, I had to go back and look at some of my pictures and things, and it brought back a lot of good memories about friendships that I made. It was really neat.
Was it fairly easy getting along with the NATO forces, or did they see you as sort of an outsider American?
They were great. And again, if you spoke German, you know, they just treated you like you were one of them. It was great. They really liked working together. They had a different outlook, especially the Germans, because they were drafted, and a lot of the guys didn't want to be there. So, you know, and we're a volunteer army, and so if we had a different attitude. It was more of a job. It was a job to me, and for others that were in it for their career, they were really, really committed. A lot of the Germans, because they were drafted, had a bad attitude. So if you could kind of crack through that and break through that with speaking German to them and, you know, making it fun, you got a lot done, and they really liked it. It worked well.
Were you able to keep in touch with your family while you were in Germany?
It was a little bit harder. We didn't have the internet back then, and you know, it was the phone calls were very expensive back then. So you know, it was old-fashioned letters and the occasional phone call.
Did your family support you in going into the military?
You know, it's funny because my dad is retired military, and he wasn't too excited about me joining the Army. He was an Air Force guy, and he just thought that the Air Force would be a safer branch to join, and he understood the Army and the likelihood that I'd be field artillery, that, you know, it would be more dangerous.
Did you have any jobs before going into the military at all?
First job was like working at a grocery store, and when I was in college I worked at a pizza restaurant, but you know, not a career, just part-time jobs.
What can you tell us about your family? Do you have any siblings, or?
I have a brother who was also in the military for the same amount of time, and he's 4 years older than I am. And he was also a Lance missile crewman. So we went to basic training together, and when we both graduated, he stayed in the States and I went to Germany.
So you didn't get to see your brother at all while you were in Germany?
Not a bit.
About what year did you depart for Germany?
I started in August of '84, and by the end of, I'm sorry, August of '82, and I believe it was November of that year that I went to Germany, and I came back August of '84. And it was, my mother's German, so that's how I got to learn to speak German when I was a kid. And when I got to the receiving station, I asked them, they said, do you have any special requests? I said, well, I have family in southern Germany. And they said, not a problem. So I got my orders, and I'm on the very northern tip of Germany. Go figure.
How did you view Germany when you first got there? Did you like it and want to be there, or did you view it as sort of a place that you didn't quite want to be, that the military just sent you there?
I consider myself very lucky to be able to go to Germany. It was really good duty.
What did you do for, during your off-duty time while you were in Germany? Were you able to go off base and have fun, or were you kept on base?
Had a lot of fun. It was really nice that because I was on the German post, they would give me passes for the German railway system. And I could travel all over the country for free. And we did a lot of traveling. I went to Denmark, Copenhagen, went all over, and it was absolutely fantastic. Very fortunate. And because I lived off of the post, I was literally living in a foreign country. All my neighbors were German, and all the meals I ate out of the grocery store when I went shopping, I was, there was nothing American about it. It was a good experience.
Would you ever think about moving to Germany after that experience? I
would love to visit. And what was different about their culture, and I understand it's changed, but, when I left the United States, you had no problem. You could go to the grocery store 24/7. You could go to a 7-Eleven or a Circle K or whatever if you needed to get something. There, everything closed at like 6 o'clock. So there were many differences in their culture. Now, I understand that they have 24-hour stores now, but they didn't back then. And on Saturday, for instance, they had one Saturday out of the month where the stores would be open till 6. Every other Saturday, they would close at noon. So you had to, if you needed to do some shopping and go out and buy some clothes or a TV or something like that, usually you had to do it before noon on Saturday.
When you first found out that you were being assigned to field artillery, what went through your mind?
I really didn't, it was all new to me. I didn't know any better. And I just did what they told me to do, and you learn to do that when you're in the military. You just do what you're told. So it's kind of like being married, You guys will figure that out. You do what you're told, and it works out better that way.
How long did it take you to learn how to operate the artillery?
Not long, probably 8 weeks. It's not as complicated. They try to make these things as simple as possible, so most everyone who tries to do it can do it. It's not super technical. And when they talk about computer programming the warhead, it's actually like putting a few numbers in. It's not like you're writing code or having to do anything really complex. Your Nintendo controller is a lot more complex than the warhead was back then.
How did wartime experiences affect your life now today, and what life lessons did you learn from being in the military?
I didn't see war. We had several alerts. Back in the early 80s, we had, the Red Army Brigade they're European terrorists. And when you're doing guard duty and you have an alert in the area, it really kind of makes the hair stand up on the back of your neck, and you are in a more aware state because there's a threat. I can't imagine what it's like to actually be in war and, not knowing who's a friendly, who's not. And I can imagine it must really wear on you. I didn't face that. I'm thankful I didn't. So I really can't answer that question other than the threat of a terror attack on the missiles that I was guarding. That's as close as I came to combat.
What was your least favorite thing about being in Germany, or like the jobs you had to do in Germany or such?
Guard duty was tough because it was a 24-hour shift, and there's 3 guys, and you're surrounded by multiple rows and fences of barbed wire, and you have the light shining in on you, and you're in the North Sea, and it's like really, really cold, and you feel like a sitting duck out there. You feel like a target when you go check the bunkers.
You said there was terrorists, the Red Army Brigade. What can you tell us about them, and what did they do?
They were a significant threat back in the 70s and 80s. The Baader-Meinhof gang, the Red Army Brigade, they blew up buildings, trains. They were real full-fledged terrorists. They just weren't Islamic.
Were they supported by any one country, or?
Just radicals, mainly German radicals.
So they were German?
Yes.
Did they believe in communism?
No. You know, to be honest with you, I really don't. They weren't communists. They were just radicals, and they were anti-capitalist, but I don't believe they were communists. I could be wrong, but that's not my recollection.
When you were first assigned to field artillery, what was your unit designation?
I went straight from basic training to OCS got on an airplane, went to a receiving station. They put me on a train, and I get there like 2 in the morning. They picked me up and at the train station, and gave me my assignment, and it was basically Lance Missile Crewman, where I guard the warheads and go on firing missions with NATO. It happened so fast. Again, you just do what you're told. And I showed up, and the guy who picked me up, the sergeant on duty at the time, said, "You're my guy, you're my platoon," and that's how it started.
What unit were you in, and what can you tell us about that unit?
I was in the 75th Armory Detachment, which was under the 59th Ordnance Brigade. And the 59th Ordnance Brigade supported NATO. My detachment, we were like 2.5 hours away from the nearest U.S. Army post. So we were in the hinterlands. We were the redheaded stepchild. We were way out in nowhere on the Danish border. But it sounds like it was awful, but for a guy who wanted to see what Germany was like and live on the economy, it was really good duty. It was cold. It was classified an Arctic zone. So when you get your equipment there, you had the big air-filled boots and the parka with the furry hood. And let me tell you, you're in the North Sea in the wintertime, it was cold.
How did you return home after your service?
I went to Fort Sill, and I'm sorry, it was a place in South Carolina, my bad. And they just basically debriefed you. You turned in your stuff, and you're a temporary free man because you had 4 years of inactive duty. If we went to war, they could call me back and put me back in my uniform and be a Lance Missile Crewman again. But that didn't happen, so I went to South Carolina, signed the paperwork, and I was done.
How did your family and your community view you upon returning?
I was very fortunate. There was no stigma attached. I was an ordinary guy. When I went in, Reagan was president, and they changed the standards of the military. And you had to have a high school diploma, and if you had some college, which I did, you kind of got a better deal. I had a very good deal in my time in the Army.
How was it when you had to readjust from Army life to civilian life?
It really wasn't that different. The hardest thing was going from the German culture to the American culture, where stuff's open 24/7 and everything's drive-through. In Germany, you do a lot more walking, and here you do a lot more driving. And the girls in Germany really didn't wear much makeup, and I went back home to Arkansas, and there was all kinds of makeup, and it was just a different value system, different culture. That was the hardest part of coming back to the States after having lived in a foreign country.
Were you able to keep in contact with any of your friends that you made in the Army over these years?
Yes. One guy in particular, his name is Wade Carden. He was in the Signal Corps. There were maybe 60, 70 Americans on the German post where I was assigned. And a handful of those were Lance missile crewmen, such as myself. And then you had the administrative people. You had some people who were cooks. You had the Signal Corps, the people who did the communications. And one of my friends from the Signal Corps left Flensburg, and I didn't tell him I had a brother. And he was stationed in Fort Sill, Oklahoma, where my brother was. And they met up, and he says, you know what, I've met a guy who looks just almost like you. And he says, oh yeah? He goes, what was his name? He said, it was Blankenship. He goes, well, my name's Blankenship, and he turned out to be my brother. So we visited him, my brother and I visited him in Atlanta. So it was pretty neat.
You said you went into the Army to get money for college. What did you want to go to college for?
You know, that was part of the problem. I wasn't really sure. I started in a pre-med program, and I really didn't have the direction I needed, and that's why the military was good for me. And when I got out, I realized that I need to be a good student because I want to make a good living, and the rest is history.
So what did you go to college for?
Ended up getting a business degree, a marketing major.
And what's your current occupation nowadays?
I'm a financial advisor, financial planner.
What does that entail?
I help people create, manage, and preserve wealth. I help rich people stay rich, and I help people who want to be rich get rich. That's what I do.
If you said that you didn't see combat, were you afraid of if combat did happen? Did you want to shoot the missile at the enemy, or did you prefer peace?
You always prefer peace, but you're trained to do what you have to do. And that's one of the things about basic training is you just learn you can do whatever you have to do. And it helps you throughout your challenges, throughout the rest of your life. And all you guys should go through basic training or some sort of service. It's my opinion. And I think we'd all be better off because you get a chance to meet someone from Kentucky or meet someone from Montana or Louisiana who might be different than you, a different color or a different religion. And it forces a lot of people out of their comfort zone. And I think we'd have more understanding of each other, and it'd be a better place if we all were forced to work together. When I was younger, you know, being gay was a horrible thing. It wasn't accepted, and in my lifetime, it's still not super accepted, but it's more accepted than, you know, it was then. Or having an African American, you know, a lot of people when I was younger, you know, having a black kid in school was weird, and now it's normal, which is good.
What can you tell us about any of your family members that have been in the military, and what did they do?
My dad was in the Air Force for about 30 years, and he retired and then had a second career, and he's retired now. My brother lives in Memphis, Tennessee, and he never finished college. He had like a couple semesters, but is a musician living in Memphis.
What did your father do when he was in the Air Force?
He was in personnel. He was the administrative side, you know, helping people issue orders, tell them where to go, get them reassigned, bringing them into a base, having them transfer to another base or change of careers. He was just more on the personnel side, the administrative side.
When you first thought that you needed money for college, what made you choose the military over, say, various scholarships that were available at the time?
You know, that's a good question. It happened quick, and it was easy, it was accessible, and it seemed like the thing to do.
When you signed the papers that enlisted you in the military, how did you feel?
I don't recall feeling a certain way. I remember getting out and feeling free in that you don't have that rigid system of control, and that the world is your oyster. You can do whatever you want. That was an empowering feeling, and I went back to college and made great grades, and it was a very fond memory from that. I was very excited to get out of the military to start my real life, because that was not my career. And it worked out great. I mean, they paid for college, and it was a very positive thing for me.
Nowadays, how do you feel about what you did in the military?
I guess I'm proud of it. I don't think that much about it. It was a job that needed to be done, and I did it. I feel sorry for the troops today, because we're understaffed and there are 4 and 5 tours, and I don't think you should expect that from any soldier. And the people who joined the National Guard, who thought that they would be weekend warriors and here to protect our home if we were invaded, are actually doing 2 and 3 tours. Personally, I don't think that's right, but that's just my opinion.
What can you tell us about the Lance missile system that you operated?
Lance missile was a mobile, camouflaged nuclear missile. And it was made to look like a military transport vehicle. And then you pull the lid off and crank it up, aim it, and fire it. So it was a very sneaky missile.
All right, Mr. Blankenship, thank you for being here today, and we hope to see you again.
Thank you for having me.